When you hear the word aggressive in a racing context, a number of things come to mind. Maybe for you, it's the beating and banging physical style of Dale Earnhardt Sr. Maybe it's the boldness of Fernando Alonso sending it around the outside of a 7-time champion. Or perhaps it's just doing anything it takes to get the win. Whatever idea of aggression you have, there's only one driver in modern NASCAR who fully embodies it. This is the story of Kyle Larson.
Inside of him. Contact! Look at this! Oh! Larson! Still bumper. Larson's gonna win! Oh, wow! That we're winless, and now he's slow on the track. The 5 right up behind him. Larson up against the wall. A lot of bumper and into hill. Here Larson's gonna win. Larson as well. Here comes Kyle Larson to win it.
Kyle Larson started his racing career on dirt in midgets and sprint cars. He built up a reputation for his incredible talent and quickly earned the nickname Young Money for how much he won. Before he was 20 years old, he signed to Earnhardt Ganassi Racing to drive in the K&N Series, where he won the championship in the East Division in his rookie season. For this performance, Kyle was instantly moved up past the Truck Series and into the Xfinity Series, where his suboptimal equipment prevented him from too much success, although he still managed 9 top 5s and an 8th place finish in the points. As the next great prodigy, he was moved up to the Cup Series at 21 years old after just 1 year in a national NASCAR series. The first 7 years of Kyle Larson's Cup career were spent at Chip Ganassi Racing driving the 42 car. By 2016, Kyle Larson had revolutionized the team, scoring a top 10 points finish for the team's first time since Juan Pablo Montoya in 2009. While this team was solid and capable of winning a race or two each year and making the playoffs, it was clear by the end of 2017 the team was holding Larson back. On the year, he won 4 races. Nobody else in the history of Chip Ganassi Racing, in its 21 years of operation from 2001 to 2021, ever scored that many wins in a single season. How did he do it? Sometimes he was just dominant, the fastest driver in the field at the end of the race by a long shot. He had a ton of speed at the 2-mile tracks in this era, and it showed as he swept them in 2017. But it wasn't just always speed. Something was different about the way Kyle Larson raced, and it showed at the end of a Michigan race.
Larson's trying to split him. He's in between the 2 Toyotas. He bounces off Martin Truex Jr. right in front of Matt Kenseth, and he's on the low line. Kyle Larson with a blinding restart.
Kyle Larson, the young guy, just made a 4-wide pass between 2 future Hall of Famers to snatch a race win on a day that he had led 0 laps. In 2018, Chevrolet had serious problems in the NASCAR Cup Series, only winning 4 out of 36 races on the year. As a result, Larson struggled like the rest of the Chevy field, and didn't win a race. Still, he managed 12 top 5s and nearly 800 laps led. He had no quit in him, and no matter the expectations, still sent it.
And here comes Larson! Larson to the bottom of the track!
Slide job!
Trying to take the lead away!
Slide job!
The momentum! The 18! They make contact! The 18 into the wall! They're side by side again! Here comes the 18! He puts the ball into the back of him! The 18 into the wall! The 42 sideways!
While he wasn't able to hold on for the win, you have to respect the sheer commitment. Larson gained a reputation for being the best driver in the field at running along the wall. The tracks where this was a useful skill proved to be some of his best. In the championship race at Homestead, Miami, we typically saw the championship 4 drivers all up in the top 5, no matter who they were. Kyle was the one competitor who was never in the championship running, but always top 5 at Homestead, ripping the fence each and every lap mere inches from hitting it. It didn't matter how good the car was, he sent it lap after lap and it worked every time. And he had been doing this since entering the Cup Series. In 2014, he absolutely stuck the car to the fence at Chicagoland while racing Jeff Gordon. Eventually it burned him and he hit the wall, but that didn't matter. What mattered was the commitment, and Jeff Gordon recognized as much after the race. Maybe this moment played in the back of Jeff's mind when Kyle Larson became a free agent at the end of 2020. When Kyle Larson joined Hendrick Motorsports at the start of 2021, expectations were not sky high. After all, he had just sat out the majority of the 2020 season and had to adjust to a new team. But it didn't take long for Kyle Larson to smash these expectations.
Kyle Larson wins. Kyle Larson wins. Kyle Larson. Larson is going to win at the Glen. He will win at the Charlotte Roval. He'll win at Texas. Larson wins at Kansas. Kyle Larson a year ago watched the race from North Carolina. Today, he's a Cup Series champion.
By the end of the season, he had won 10 out of 36 races, the most since Jimmy Johnson in 2007, and secured his first Cup Series championship. But while this season was fantastic, it wasn't really what the focus of this video is. Larson looked like he had just conquered the 6th generation Cup car, but in 2022, an entirely new car would start to be used. And this is where we really began to see what Kyle Larson was all about. The new next-gen car came with parts provided by NASCAR, so the 5-team at Hendrick Motorsports couldn't build up the car to dominate as much as they had the prior season. Because everyone had the same parts, the field in every race was way closer. It became harder to pass, and any mistake could ruin your entire race, where in years past you could simply drive up through the field after falling back. This made every position so much more valuable, and no driver took to this idea more than Kyle Larson. Throughout this season, we would see week after week Kyle was in contention, one of the fastest cars on the track, and a favorite to win the race. He would do anything to maintain and advance his position. This was quickly made apparent in the second race of the year at Fontana, where he forced his teammate Chase Elliott into the wall to score the win. But usually, it didn't work out quite so well for him. The next week in Las Vegas, while running up front, he hit the wall. Then, on the final restart, he pushed his car too hard and lost control, conceding the win to Alex Bowman. 2 weeks later at Atlanta, he got caught up in a crash. The next week at Circuit of the Americas, he completely missed turn 1 and slammed into the wall. A couple months later at Darlington, he had the fastest car on the day and led the majority of the start of the race until a caution came out. It cycled him behind Joey Logano, and once again Kyle overstepped the bounds of his car and lost control. After engine issues, he would go on to finish the race in last place, when he really should have won. This has been the MO for Kyle Larson since 2022. Fastest car, fastest driver, but something just goes wrong too often. No incident exemplified Larson's inconsistency more than Indianapolis.
Oh boy, my goodness. Oh.
He crashed so hard that everyone thought it must have been caused by a brake failure. But interviews with Kyle revealed that it was just a mistake. He just overcooked it into the corner that hard. A few weeks after this, Kyle got his second win of the season at Watkins Glen, but it didn't come without its price. Once again, he dove too hard into turn 1, using up Chase Elliott for the win. It seems like every time there was a late race restart with Larson in the running, something was bound to happen, be it good or bad for him. The most fitting end to his season came at the Charlotte Roval, where he made another simple, unforced mistake pushing too hard when he didn't need to. The crash broke his suspension, and he was eliminated from the playoffs at the end of the race. Of course, this didn't stop him from ripping the fence all race at Homestead en route to a dominating victory a few weeks later. But it was too little too late. His mistakes had already cost him his chance at a championship.
Yeah, I just made way too many mistakes all year long, and
So you may think that after a long offseason, Kyle Larson might reflect on it and relax his driving style. Well, in reality, he did anything but relax. He scored his first win of the season at Richmond, then a week later crashed at Bristol Dirt, trying to squeeze past Ryan Preece on the outside when Preece was already pretty high. A few weeks later at Talladega, he tried again to squeeze in the middle and push Ross Chastain past Noah Gragson, but got caught up in a huge wreck. I bring up all of these times that Kyle Larson's aggression went wrong, not necessarily to condemn it. I really appreciate the way Larson drives, and it keeps the races very entertaining. I think these crashes underscore the immense confidence that Kyle Larson has, and how a lot of the time it doesn't come back to bite him. That's why he's the best driver on the best team in NASCAR right now. He just has more confidence than everyone else. That confidence showed at Darlington when he battled with Ross Chastain for the win. On a late race restart, he dove his car into turn 1 and washed Chastain up the track and into the wall. The problem was, as this happened, a crash behind them drew out a caution and forced another restart. This time Chastain wasn't having any of it and dove it in even harder than Larson had, taking out himself and Larson. This incident showed the difference between the aggression of a driver like Larson and a driver like Chastain. Kyle Larson, with his 10 years of Cup experience, was going to push Chastain perfectly up the track into a spot which wouldn't damage either of their cars, but would allow Kyle to get by. Chastain, on the other hand, took too much speed into his slide and took out both drivers. While Larson is far from perfect when it comes to these moves, his dirt racing background really gives him a better basis for his racecraft, and I would argue that very few drivers could pull off the perfect slide that Larson was in the middle of performing when that caution came out. The next week though, again Kyle Larson was trying too hard on a late race restart and spun himself out. Again, he lost control by himself at Atlanta a month later. Finally, he ran a clean stretch of races, including a win at Darlington. But at Texas, it happened once again. He fought for the win all day, leading 99 laps, and was side by side for the win with 20 laps to go after a late race restart.
Oh, around goes a 5! He slides it into the wall, he goes, the caution comes out!
Again, he had let close racing on a restart burn him. He just can't help himself from pushing his car as hard as possible, especially in an era where the racing is so close. This is something that we never saw from him in his dominant 2021 season or the 7 years prior even. But the new car had brought it out in him almost every week for 2 years. A few weeks after this, we saw him display his incredible talent with an amazing save, which he followed up by winning the whole race. This win locked him into the championship round, which was crucial, as he would once again overstep himself the next week by slamming into the pit road wall while chasing Ryan Blaney for the lead. This incident was the perfect note to end his season off on, as he went on to lose the championship to that very same driver a few weeks later at Phoenix. So maybe the third time's the charm for Kyle Larson in the Gen 7 car. Maybe in 2024 he would finally stop making all those silly mistakes from pushing too hard and return to that domination he saw in 2021, which he surely feels like he's capable of. After all, he is the betting favorite to win almost every race and is the only driver in modern NASCAR who seems to be genuinely capable of winning every week. But so far, it's been a similar story for Kyle in 2024. While he is currently leading the standings, a lot of his points come from stage results rather than race results. That said, he dominated Las Vegas and held off a hard-charging Tyler Reddick in the final few laps for his first win of the season. A loose wheel spoiled his chance for a win at Texas, but he more than made up for it with an incredible move at Kansas.
They're going to close right to the 2 leaders, coming to the line, clash together. I believe Buscher. It's like the Kentucky Derby. Oh, it's that close. It's Larson.
The finish was the closest in NASCAR Cup Series history, and will go down as one of Larson's most famous moments. But just as we see the highs, the lows follow, and a few weeks later at Gateway, Kyle spun himself out, taking out Kyle Busch in the collateral damage. Of course, the very next week, Larson would make a fantastic 6-second comeback on Chris Buescher and Martin Truex Jr. in the final 30 laps to win at Sonoma. The boomer bust nature of his driving didn't stop there, though. The very next week at Iowa, Kyle looked like he might be the driver to beat. A caution cycled him behind some of the drivers on old tires, so on the restart he looked to take advantage. He sliced his way 3 wide between Brad Keselowski and Daniel Suarez when, to no fault of Larson, Suarez caught his left rear quarter panel, sending him into the fence. This incident really speaks to what is happening on a broad scale with Larson. Of course, sometimes he just makes mistakes, but other times he's so aggressive that the other drivers around just can't accommodate him, and they lose control trying to keep up. But 2 weeks later at Nashville wouldn't be the same story. Throughout the race, Larson had been feuding back and forth with Denny Hamlin. So when a late race caution gave him the opportunity to start behind Denny, Kyle wasn't going to give him any lenience. But in doing this, he exceeded his car's limits once again.
Big push by the 5, and up the racetrack he catches the 1, Chastain into the wall.
In trying too hard to nudge Hamlin's car out of the groove, Kyle had lost control and wrecked a large group of cars, including second place Ross Chastain. This doomed both he and Denny, as they would both end up running out of fuel due to too many overtimes. So that all brings us to today. Kyle Larson's career has featured a number of ups and downs, booms and busts. But without this kind of aggression, there's no point to race. If the drivers aren't going to push as hard as they can, they'd be better off staying at home. It's remarkable that these 3 and 4 win seasons for Kyle Larson are even viewed as suboptimal, but he's just that good, and he's still got a long career ahead of himself to recapture that sheer and utter dominance that he held so firmly in 2021. But one thing that he'll never have to recapture is his pure aggression.
Kyle Larson.
Checkered flag, great.
He goes to the top. 232.788. He won.
Thanks for watching, everybody.